Hey there, everybody. My name is Ben Proudfoot. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and it is my honor to have a conversation with Michael and Gaston about their beautiful film Qotzuñi. That is a short documentary that's on the Academy screening room at the moment, and the world is finding out about this important story. So, hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Great. So thank you for having this conversation with us. It's also a pleasure for us. So thank you.
Awesome. Um, so, how did you find yourself in this part of the world in the Bolivian Altiplano? How did you find yourself there in the first place?
So we were both down in the Altiplano for separate reasons. I was doing research about water access issues in indigenous communities related to mining. So in Chile and Bolivia, where there's a lot of copper and lithium and tin and silver mining, learning about how those processes impact very vulnerable communities. And a friend of mine said he's from Oruro, which is the city closest to Lake Popo and the Oruro communities. He said if you really want to understand how mining impacts water access, you have to go to Lake Popo. It was one of the biggest lakes in the entire country. It was the second biggest, and it's completely dry now. And the people who lived there called themselves people of the lake, and you'd be fascinated to see what happened. So I went to the community and I spoke with some advocacy groups that work nearby. I met with the authorities, and we kind of really discussed what we could do to bring their story to a global audience and how that could maybe translate into material change in the community. And it was around that time that I met up with Gaston, who was in the region. Maybe you could say Gasti while you're there.
Yeah, I was in Bolivia. I'm from Argentina, and I was traveling on the search for stories and trying to, kind of through image, through film and video, communicate about these communities that suffer the consequences of climate change and human overdevelopment. And it was our producer, which is also my friend and Michael's brother, who said, "You should meet." And once we were there, well, the rest is history. And it was 2 years from now that we decided to do this short film, and that today is much more than the film itself, and it's a huge impact project that was built from the very beginning in conversation with the community, like what do they need, what would be cool, with a goal of having this global exposure to the story and getting people to know about it, and also trying to make the film actually make change in the community. So that was kind of how it grew organically towards what's now.
So let's talk about the film for a little bit. So how long did you take to make the movie? I mean, there's so many stunning and memorable images in this movie. The boats, the bicycles, the animals, the birds that are just sort of like frozen in time, dehydrated there on the salt flats. How many days did you spend shooting the movie?
So we were in the region learning, speaking with the community and doing that kind of that process of building trust and access, which with a very vulnerable indigenous community that has lived in isolation for a long time on this lake was a really crucial part. So we were there for some weeks. We were kind of only spent a summer there, or for us it was the summer, and in Bolivia it's the with winter. Um, but it's the dry season, so we were able to spend that time with them. And then principal photography, that the shooting only took place over a couple of weeks. And I guess you can talk more about that.
Like 10 days or so, and that it was also being really uh like available to what the community wanted us to film, right? Like it's not that we said, oh, we want to interview this guy or this guy. It was with a maximum authority that was like, oh, what we should do. Oh, we should go to talk here to this guy here, and trying to make up the story. And we at first thought that it was a, kind of a story about the lake disappearing, and then we said like, hell no, that's the story about the people that live in that lake. How is that connection through between nature and human, and what's how they remain calling themselves Qotzuñi, that they say it over and over in the interviews, that means people of the lake when there's no lake. So um, it's been a short process that we had to, like, it was one shot opportunities. It's not that we could go back to some places, but we had really good communication and collaboration with them, that they were really open to do this, and that was maybe one of the main reasons that we were able to get this film done in the way that represents the community and
Hmm.
to share the story.
Tell me about, one of the most memorable, striking images from the film, at least for me, is the three men who are in the boat sitting on this totally dry lake bed, salt flat, and the old man starts rowing, and there's no. It's one of the most sort of the saddest and most effective images of climate refugees that I've ever seen. What what came together for that moment when he started to move those oars? What was it like being there filming that?
It was, I think, one of the strongest moments of the whole production because it was also something that happened organically. We were driving 1 hour and a half to the center of the lake, searching for if there was sometimes there's a little bit of water when it rains and it then dries up really fast. And we stopped right next to their abandoned boats. So that boat, it's not a random one in the lake. It's one of the community members' boats that he kind of said to me like take a picture of me here because I don't know if I'm going to come back here. Like I don't have why would I come back to there's no water. Why should I look for my boat? And then it was like a really silent and empty place and that we were kind of everybody doing their stuff and reflecting about this. And when I start taking this picture, Florencio, which is also our associate producer, says like, "Hey, come on, like hop in," and then we kind of gather there. And my first instant was to take a picture, but I do photography and film, so it was like I asked like, "Hey, stay there for one more moment," and suddenly Florencio says to the old man Felix, he says like, "Hey, start rowing." It's something that kind of like organically happened, and it is the image that for me represents the story the most because it's the community that keeps rowing although there's no water and they keep calling themselves community like the people of the lake. So it's something that it was a really striking moment for the production that in the moment that we had that experience we knew that it was going to be kind of the opening or the closure of the film because of its transcendence and how surreal it is but how it represents a
Yeah.
story.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been amazing to be there, and that's so meaningful that that's their actual boat that was abandoned there. Help me as someone who's new coming to this story. So there seems to be kind of like multiple things happening. There's contamination from these silver and tin mines. There's also maybe like a diversion of the river that leads to this lake emptying, and then on top of that, there's also a climate change drought element. Why exactly did this lake disappear?
Yeah, so you got a lot of the components there, exactly. Lake Popo is kind of the terminus of this basin, which includes Lake Titicaca, which is much larger and more famous as the
Right.
center of the Inca Empire and the center of civilization in the Altiplano. But Lake Popo was also a center of civilization in the region. And yes, there's a lot of mining in that region of the Andes for tin and silver. And so the mining has diverted a lot of water because the tin refinement process is very water intensive. So that has taken water away from the tributaries to the lake. So it has also caused contaminants like arsenic, mercury, and lead to enter those same tributaries,
Hmm.
raising the pH, the acidity, and the salinity of the water, and that has caused it to evaporate more quickly during the dry season. So those two components, along with about 10 years ago, a large El Nino event that brought a prolonged drought, really made the lake disappear very quickly and unfortunately in such a way that it will not come back. And even when the water does come back slightly, it is extremely contaminated. So those are all of the components that have led. It's really a perfect storm of drought and diversions and contamination
Huh.
that have caused the lake to disappear.
It's
What
also
what?
a
Oh, go ahead.
life in the lake, right? More than the water, it's a life that it's what's most important for the Urus.
Yeah. What are we using tin for? Why is there such a thirst for tin?
Yeah, so this is one of the largest tin production regions in the world. And tin and of course silver and copper and lithium, which also is large in this region, are all crucial for what we call the green transition, right? So as more things are electrified and the grids are electrified in North America and Europe, often this requires metals like tin and copper and silver for whether it's coating wires or other, I mean, really, and aluminum and bronze creation. Just a lot of these metals that we're using more and more now with this transition, unfortunately, are kind of wreaking havoc on many of the ecosystems in this region. And lithium is, more famously one of those,
Right.
especially in the Salar region of the Atacama in Chile. But right now, especially with the change in Bolivia's government, there's going to be a massive increase in the exploitation of lithium in the Salar de Uyuni, for example. And we really don't know how that's going to impact some of these communities. And so it's something
Also,
that's
it's a whole area of mining forever, and it's like public mines, private international mines, and also cooperatives, like people that get together and start mining. So it's like a really structural problem that affects the Urus together with the whole like global warming and climate change crisis. So it's like a really structural thing that happens in that region, that it's not one mine, it's
Right.
the whole region, and the people now have to work in the very same mines that like caused this loss. And that's something that was left out of the 13-minute film, that we really want to communicate, that it's something, no, it's it's so sad that now they have to work there. So they're also doing a lot of efforts to move away from that, and the art crafts has been really
Right.
important. And the woman, for example, the woman's role in the community has changed so much, because now what was a symbolism and tradition now is the main source of income of the community.
There's a great irony, obviously, in that the thirst for these minerals and metals is coming from the rest of the world reacting to climate change, and it's causing further damage to the world by contaminating the environment. That's
absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
often people refer to this region as one of sacrifice, right? But I think that is, I mean, that's kind of a tragic and thing to say we're going to sacrifice this region and these ecosystems and these people because we want, to have this kind of change to our, electric cars or our electric grid. And that's something that the world really, I think, needs to combat face to face to say, what is the impact of actually doing these things in the places from which the resources are coming? And that's not something that people have really turned inward and considered as strongly as I think they need to.
And in a place like Bolivia, where the native communities are like so important culturally, like for example, Bolivia, it's the plurinational state of Bolivia because they recognize all the indigenous nations, right? So it's that place, and that they suffer the most also because it's also a poor country that needs to, have international investments and stuff. So it's a huge irony, but the Urus keep rowing in that way, and I think that that's why what we also want to share. It's a sad story, but kind of the resilience that they have, and the hope of uh, maintaining their traditions.
Hmm. What um what was their reaction? Did you have a screening of the film for the community?
Yeah, we recently screened the film in a cultural center in Oruro with the Oruro Film Festival, and many of the authorities went and spoke because even though this is happening so close to a population center of around 400,000 or 500,000 people, many of those people in that city don't even really know about the Urus and what they're experiencing so close, right? So that was a really important way to kind of bring communities together in the region. And of course, so the communities have seen the film as soon as we made them, but really just like via WhatsApp. This was the first time they were able to see it in a theatrical setting and really speak about it, and that was really special. So they wrote to us and they really expressed appreciation for being able to do it among community that even though they're so close, may not always recognize those struggles.
Yeah, and also there's this thing that like they care about the film, but if it actually brings change to the community, like it's they don't, sometimes we're like, oh, we screened here in this country and this country and this country. It's like, I don't know if they, it's that so important for them because they really want the material change in the community, and that's kind of their the thing that most matters to them. And obviously it's a huge impact. We screened over 60 times in more than 18 countries, and they're really happy of having the possibility of, the world knowing the story. But that's valued if the film success transfers, into material change in the community, and it's what they care the most.
What is, you know, is it just, is it all is lost? The water's contaminated? Like, is there anything that can be done at this point? Or is it really kind of like a eulogy for what once was? Is it even possible for this lake to come back?
So it's a little bit of both. I mean, in terms of the lake coming back, I mean, hydrologists have looked at it and scientists have looked at it. And unfortunately, if water does come, like Gusty said, it is very contaminated and it's not going to be able to support the community and support life in the same way that it did. However, there are remediation steps that can be taken. So, for example, the arborization or the replanting of native plants like straw and trees that can help retain water and can help with water quality as well as contaminants may be filtered through those straws. So that's a very important thing that our project is hoping to address, collaborating with nearby municipalities to fund those projects. And then, the community wants to be able to retain its economic and cultural independence from Quechua groups and Aymara groups, which are different ethnicities, speak a different language, they have different history. And so, whereas the lake may not come back in a way that can sustain the community, them being independent in the way of, having artisanship that allows them to run their own family businesses, salt granulation, natural medicines, and a host of other family-run businesses. These are crucial in order to allow the families not to have to go work in those same mines, as we've mentioned before. And so the project has been able a little bit to send stimulus funds to those family businesses, and that's really important, right? For the Uru community to be able to remain the Uru community and not have to move and migrate away from the region and assimilate into other cultures. Because at the end of the day, it's a story of cultural loss, I think, even more than environmental loss.
Yeah, and also it's a story of, sometimes we talk a lot about preservation and what can we do to not lose this forest, to not lose this. Okay, but what happens when it's done? And this is one of the most extreme examples of that. Like there's so many lakes drying up around the world. It's like what happens when a community that disaster has already happened? What's the next step? What's the resilience? And that it's far from over, and they are not gonna surrender their selves. They try to maintain as much as they can the traditions, but I don't know, there's no work, so they have to migrate. It's a difficult situation, and we try to like to bring a little hope to the community also, and to incentivize that resilience. But also, it's something that we're gonna see every time more often in the world. That's what happens next when that's it. We don't have, when what happens when the sea level rises? Okay, what happened when that's it? When it covered an island? What happens with that community? That would be the contrary
Right.
example, but
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting in that it's a rare film where there's no advocacy around reversing it, right? Oh, this bad thing happens. Let's fix it. Let's bring the water back, and so that the boat can row and whatever. It's just like that's it. This is a change. It's a portrait. It's a snapshot of a community of human beings who built a way of life around this geographical body of water, this water feature that humankind has now changed, and it's a postcard of something that once was. I noticed at the end of the film, there's a card that says, we're all people of the same lake. How did that language come to you, and why was that the statement you wanted to make at the end of the film?
Yeah, I think so. We wanted to leave a sort of universal message to this, and say that yes, this is happening to the Uru community, and not to over abstract, and to say that this is a metaphor for something much greater, and that these are very urgent problems that need to be addressed. But for people to not always say, okay, that's happening all the way in Bolivia, and therefore I don't need to think about it. Maybe I watch this movie for 15 minutes and then I'll go about my day. But to really try and universalize it so that we can all, I mean, the lake didn't just dry up for the Urus, it dried up for all of us, right? And it's similar problems are occurring, whether it's California, Colorado, so Great Salt Lake in the US or even across the entire world. Similar lakes are drying up and there's water access issues everywhere. But even further than that, I think I want everybody who watches this film to kind of reconsider the way that they interact with their own environment. Maybe you don't have such the close bond that the Urus did with Lake Popo to wherever you live, but to really reconsider that and say, what impact does the natural world around me have on me, and what impact do I have on it? I think that will be the first step in recognizing, our own complicity in these problems, and also what role we have in being part of the solution. So,
Well, I commend you both on making a beautiful film, a beautiful short documentary. I didn't know anything about this story, and I felt profoundly moved by it. It's photographed beautifully. It's edited beautifully. Congratulations on a moving film, and it's clear that it's had an enormous amount of success. I know it was on the DOC NYC shortlist. It's on the Academy screening room for folks' consideration. I strongly hope people will take time to watch this film. It's only 13 minutes long, and it's a perspective that I think the world needs to see. So congratulations on a really beautiful film, an important impact campaign, and I wish you the best of luck with the film.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. Also, it's really important for us, to send this message, and through people like that with incredible films like you that we also look up to a lot, and we're really happy to take this story to the world and try to make everybody know about it or think about it a little bit, at least for 13 minutes.